The crystal chandelier above the poker table cast fractured light across Vincent Harlow's face as he leaned back in his leather chair, cigar smoke curling from his lips like a serpent. His eyes, cold, calculating, merciless, fixed on the trembling teenager across from him. "You actually think you belong at this table?" Vincent's voice dripped with venom. Around them, a crowd of Manhattan's elite had gathered, their phones raised, recording every second of the humiliation. "Your mother scrubs my toilets, and now her little bastard thinks he can sit with kings." 17-year-old Leo Washington kept his eyes down, his fingers white-knuckled around his cards. The borrowed suit hung loose on his thin frame, sweat beaded at his temples. Vincent had just raised the bet to $50,000, more money than Leo's mother would earn in 3 years of dawn-to-dusk labor in the Harlow mansion. "I'm waiting, boy." Vincent tapped ash onto the antique table, deliberately marking the mahogany his grandfather had imported from Indonesia. "Either show me your cards and admit you're bluffing or put up the money." "Oh wait," he paused for cruel effect and the crowd laughed on cue, "you don't have any." Leo's hand moved toward his cards, his breathing was shallow. The crowd pressed closer, their camera flashes creating a strobe effect that made the moment feel surreal, nightmarish. Vincent smiled, it was the smile of a predator that had cornered its prey. But they have no idea what's about to happen next. If you think this is shocking already, wait until you hear the twist. Hit subscribe now so you don't miss it. The Harlow estate sprawled across 5 acres of prime Connecticut coastline like a monument to excess. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the private game room, the Atlantic Ocean churned under a moonless sky, its waves like black silk against the rocky shore. Inside, everything gleamed. The poker table was surrounded by chairs that cost more than cars. Bottles of Macallan 1926 lined the bar, 60-year-old whiskey worth hundreds of thousands. The air itself seemed different here, filtered and perfumed as if even oxygen could be bought and refined. But if you walked down the servants' staircase, the narrow, dim corridor hidden behind a panel in the kitchen, you'd enter a different world. Cramped quarters with fluorescent lighting that hummed constantly. The smell of industrial cleaner and yesterday's bleach. Small rooms where women like Lorraine Washington collapsed after 16-hour shifts, too exhausted to remove their uniforms before sleep claimed them. 2 worlds, 1 house. The game room's sound system played Chopin at a volume calibrated to suggest sophistication. But if you listen closely, you could hear other sounds beneath it. The industrial dishwasher in the kitchen 3 floors down, the muffled Spanish conversations between night shift workers, the quiet desperation of people who knew that one mistake, one stain, one broken glass, one moment of visibility could cost them everything. Tonight, Vincent Harlow had decided to erase that invisible line. He'd invited Leo to play. Vincent Harlow wore his wealth like armor. At 42, his hair had gone distinguished gray at the temples, the kind of aging that made powerful men more attractive. His suit was Brioni, his watch a Patek Philippe that cost more than most people's homes. But it was his eyes that revealed his true nature, pale blue, always calculating, always finding the angle, the weakness, the jugular. He had a tell, though he didn't know it. When he was truly confident, truly certain of victory, his left thumb would tap twice against whatever he was holding. Twice, like a judge's gavel. Vincent had inherited his billions and spent his life proving he deserved them by crushing anyone who suggested otherwise. He collected humiliations the way some people collected art. Leo Washington looked young even for 17, lean with his mother's deep brown eyes and the kind of quietness that people mistook for weakness. He wore a second-hand suit that a dealer at the estate had given him too big in the shoulders, too long in the sleeves. His fingernails were clean but his hands showed the evidence of work. Small scars, calluses from helping his mother carry cleaning supplies up and down those narrow stairs. But his eyes were different than they'd been a year ago. They moved constantly, tracking, calculating, seeing patterns that others missed. There was something ancient in that gaze, something that understood the mathematics of human behavior. He had learned not to be seen, to be invisible had been survival. Until tonight. The crowd was composed of Vincent's usual entourage. Hedge fund managers, corporate lawyers, real estate developers who'd made fortunes displacing the poor. They wore their cruelty casually like another expensive accessory. To them, Leo wasn't a person, he was entertainment, a circus act, proof of their own superiority. They filmed everything, already imagining the social media posts, the private group chats where they'd dissect this moment of delicious class warfare. 18 months earlier. Leo had found Mr. Casimir Volkov in the servants' quarters at 2 a.m., playing solitaire with cards so worn the numbers were barely visible. Kaz was 73, a former groundskeeper who Vincent kept employed out of some residual obligation to Kaz's 40 years of service. He had the weathered face of someone who'd seen everything and the hands of someone who'd done everything. Those hands moved across the cards with a precision that seemed almost musical. "You can't sleep either?" Kaz had asked without looking up, his Russian accent still thick after 5 decades in America. Leo had shaken his head. Upstairs, his mother was working a double shift. They needed the money for his college applications. "Come sit," Kaz gestured to the folding chair across from him. "I teach you something useful." That night, over instant coffee and stolen cookies from the main kitchen, Casimir Volkov began teaching Leo Washington the art of poker. But not just poker, psychology, mathematics, pattern recognition, how to read the micro-expressions that flickered across faces in the milliseconds before conscious control took over, how to control your own breathing, your own tells, your own fear. "In Soviet Union I was mathematician," Kaz explained during one of their midnight sessions. "But after the fall, mathematics don't pay bills, so I learned this." He shuffled the cards in a cascade that seemed to defy gravity. "Poker is not about cards, Leo, is about people, and people," he tapped his temple, "people are more predictable than they think." Night after night, while the wealthy slept in their silk sheets upstairs, Leo learned. Kaz taught him probability theory using poker hands, expected value, pot odds, but more importantly, he taught Leo to see patterns in human behavior, how anger makes people reckless, how pride makes them blind, how the need to prove superiority makes people do predictable things. "The rich man, he is easiest to beat," Kaz had said one night, his eyes distant with memory. "Because he cannot imagine losing, his confidence it becomes his weakness." Leo practiced for 8 months. Every night after his mother fell asleep exhausted, he'd meet Kaz in the servants' quarters. They'd play for pennies, then for chores, then for nothing at all except the pure joy of the game. Kaz had made Leo promise something: "You use this only when you must, not for money, not for pride, but if someone tries to take your dignity," he'd looked at Leo with sudden fierceness, "then you show them what underestimated means." 3 months ago, Kaz had died in his sleep, heart failure. Vincent had given his mother 3 days to move his belongings out. At the funeral, attended by only servants, Leo had made a silent promise to the old Russian mathematician who'd treated him like a grandson: "I won't let them make us invisible anymore." Now, in the game room where Chopin played and cruelty masqueraded as entertainment, Leo looked down at his cards. A pair of sevens, nothing special, certainly not worth $50,000. But poker wasn't about the cards in your hand, it was about the cards your opponent thought you had. Leo had been watching Vincent all night. He'd cataloged every tell, every pattern, every psychological weakness. And he'd found the key: Vincent needed to dominate. It wasn't enough to win, he needed his opponents to feel crushed, humiliated, broken. That need was a vulnerability. Leo's voice came out soft, uncertain. He let it crack slightly. Around the room, phones captured his apparent fear. "I don't have the money." Vincent's smile widened, his left thumb tapped twice against his cigar, confident, certain. "Then fold your cards and get out," Vincent said. "And take your mother with you. I don't need cleaning staff who raise children who don't know their place." The crowd murmured approval. Someone laughed. Leo's mother, Lorraine, stood in the doorway. She'd been called up from the kitchen. Vincent had insisted she watch her son's humiliation. Her face was a mask of controlled terror. She was calculating how long they could survive without this job, where they could go, whether Leo's college dreams were about to die in this room. But Leo wasn't looking at his mother, he was watching Vincent's thumb, tap, tap. "What if," Leo said slowly, "I could offer something else instead of money?" Vincent raised an eyebrow. "Like what?" "Your mother's jewelry." More cruel laughter. Lorraine Washington owned no jewelry except a simple cross necklace from her own mother. "No," Leo said, "if I lose, I'll sign a statement saying I tried to steal from you. You can press charges. I'll go to prison. My mother will be publicly disgraced." The room went silent. Even Vincent looked momentarily surprised. And if you win? Vincent asked, intrigued now. This was better than money, this was total destruction. If I win, Leo said, his voice growing steadier, you write a check to the Servants' Children Education Fund for $1 million. There is no such fund, Vincent said. There will be. Leo looked up and for the first time that night met Vincent's eyes directly. After tonight. Vincent's smile could have frozen the ocean outside. Deal, show your cards first. No, Leo said quietly, you raised, you show first. If this part has you on edge, hit the like button right now, it lets us know you want more stories like this. Vincent hesitated for just a microsecond, then he laid down his cards with a flourish. 3 queens, an incredibly strong hand. The crowd erupted, phones captured Lorraine Washington's face crumpling, someone started a slow clap. Your turn, boy, Vincent said, his thumb tapped twice, tap, tap, show me what desperation looks like. Leo reached for his cards. His hands were steady now, rock steady, as if Kaz's weathered fingers were guiding them from somewhere beyond this room. The chandelier crystals caught the light. The ocean waves crashed against rocks outside. And Leo Washington began to smile, a small smile, mysterious, that seemed to contain knowledge of something Vincent Harlow couldn't yet see. Leo's fingers hovered over his cards, but he didn't flip them yet. Instead he spoke. You have a tell, Mr. Harlow. Vincent's smile faltered, just for a microsecond, so brief that only someone trained to watch for it would notice, but Leo noticed everything now. Your left thumb, Leo continued, his voice quiet but clear in the suddenly silent room. When you're absolutely certain you're going to win, you tap it twice. You did it when you raised to 50,000, you did it again just now when you laid down your queens. The crowd shifted, phones adjusted their angles, this wasn't supposed to be part of the script. Vincent's face hardened. Are you stalling because you have nothing, just show your... I've been watching you all night, Leo interrupted. Something had changed in him. The trembling teenager was gone. In his place sat someone who'd spent 18 months studying human behavior with a master. You did it 4 times tonight, always with premium hands, always when you were sure. So what? Vincent snapped, but his left hand had unconsciously moved to his lap, hidden beneath the table. So it means you have 3 queens and you know 3 queens beats almost everything. Leo's eyes never left Vincent's face. But here's what you don't know, I've been controlling this entire game. A murmur rippled through the crowd. That's absurd, Vincent said, but there was something new in his voice, a hairline crack in the armor. Leo leaned forward slightly. The first hand I played tonight I folded immediately even though I had pocket jacks. Why? Because I needed you to see me as weak, as timid, as exactly what you expected the maid's son to be. He was right. Vincent had laughed when Leo folded that hand, had made a joke about knowing one's place. The second hand I bet aggressively with nothing and let you catch me bluffing. You won $50 and felt clever, but I wasn't trying to win, I was teaching you to expect me to bluff when I'm nervous. Vincent's jaw tightened. Around them the crowd had gone completely silent. This wasn't entertainment anymore, this was something else. Every fold, every nervous gesture, every time I looked away from you, it was theater. I was building a character in your mind, the scared kid, the desperate amateur, someone you could crush without effort. Leo's voice was clinical now, almost gentle, like a surgeon explaining an incision. And you believed it because it confirmed what you already thought about people like me. This is ridiculous, Vincent said. But he'd stopped smiling. His eyes were scanning Leo's face, searching for the bluff, for the angle. You have a pair of 7s at best, maybe worse, you're trying to talk your way out of. You're right, Leo said simply, I have exactly a pair of 7s. The crowd gasped. Lorraine Washington's hand flew to her mouth. Vincent's smile returned, triumphant. Then you just admitted to losing. 3 queens beats. But you don't have 3 queens, Leo said. The words hung in the air like a held breath. Vincent's face went very still. They're right here on the table, everyone can see. You have 3 cards that look like queens, Leo corrected, but one of them isn't real. The room erupted. Vincent shot to his feet, his chair scraping back with a screech. Are you accusing me of cheating in my own home? Not cheating, Leo said calmly, confusion. He reached across the table slowly, deliberately, and picked up one of Vincent's queens, the queen of diamonds. He held it up to the light. This is from a different deck. The crowd pressed closer. Leo was right, the card's back had a subtly different pattern. Same manufacturer, same general design, but a different production year. The difference was almost imperceptible unless you were looking for it. So, Vincent sputtered, someone mixed the decks by mistake, it's still a queen, it's still. It means this deck is compromised, Leo said. And under Nevada Gaming Commission rules which govern all high-stakes poker games regardless of location, a compromised deck voids the hand. This isn't Nevada, Vincent hissed. No, but you structured this game as a legal gambling event. Leo pulled a paper from his jacket pocket, the contract Vincent had made him sign before playing. See, Section 7, subsection C. You wrote that this game would follow NGCC standards to make it legally binding so you could sue me if I didn't pay. Your own lawyer's language. Several people in the crowd were lawyers. They were pulling out their phones, fact-checking, whispering. Vincent's face had gone from red to white. This is insane, you're trying to. The hand is void, Leo repeated, but that's not why I'm going to win. He stood up slowly and somehow, despite being several inches shorter and lighter than Vincent Harlow, he seemed to fill the room. You're going to lose because you made the same mistake every powerful person makes. You assumed being poor made me stupid. Leo turned to address the crowd, the phones, the people who'd been laughing at him minutes earlier. Mr. Volkov, Kaz, was a mathematical genius. He worked here for 40 years as a groundskeeper, not because he wasn't brilliant but because he was an immigrant with an accent and people like Mr. Harlow never looked close enough to see what he actually was. He turned back to Vincent. Kaz taught me probability theory, game theory, advanced statistics. He had a PhD in mathematics from Moscow State University, one of the best programs in the world, but here he was just the old Russian who mows the lawn. Leo's voice grew stronger. For 18 months he trained me not just in poker, in reading people, in understanding that the wealthy have patterns just like everyone else, maybe more predictable because you've never had to hide who you are. He pointed at Vincent's cards. You keep your strongest hands in your right jacket pocket. You did it all night, won a big pot, then touched your right pocket. A self-soothing gesture making sure your wins were secure. When you went to the bathroom 40 minutes ago, I saw you transfer chips from your right pocket to your left. Vincent's hand unconsciously moved to his right pocket, then froze. You marked certain high-value cards with tiny nail indentations on the edges. Not obvious marks, just little pressures that you could feel when dealing. I watched you do it during the third hand while everyone was laughing at one of your jokes. The crowd was dead silent now. Several people had stopped recording, too shocked to remember they were holding phones. And the mixed queen, you did that on purpose. You've been using cards from multiple decks all night, keeping track of which ones were in play, giving yourself information advantages. That's why you insisted on being the dealer. Leo reached into his own pocket and pulled out his phone. He tapped the screen. A video began playing, security camera footage from an angle that showed Vincent's hands clearly, showed him marking cards, showed him switching decks, showed everything. The estate security system uploads to a cloud server in real time, Leo said quietly. Kaz helped set it up years ago. He showed me how to access it before he died. He said someday I might need proof of something. He was right. Vincent lunged for the phone, but 3 members of the crowd, including 2 lawyers who'd suddenly realized they didn't want to be associated with documented fraud, stepped between them. You little, Vincent's voice was strangled. You set this up, you planned. I planned to play fair, Leo said. But when you raised to 50,000 money you knew I didn't have just to humiliate me and my mother in front of these people, I realized something. You weren't playing poker, you were playing cruelty, and I'm better at poker. He turned to the crowd. He cheated on camera with witnesses in a legally structured gaming event that he designed. That's fraud, criminal fraud. One of the lawyers was already on his phone, stepping away, clearly calling someone. Leo walked slowly around the table until he was standing directly in front of Vincent Harlow. You wanted to know if I belonged at this table, he said softly. Here's the truth, I don't, not because I'm not good enough, but because this table is rotten. He gestured around the room. Everyone here has spent the night treating my mother and the other staff like they're invisible, like they're not fully human. You've laughed at jokes about them, ignored them when they brought you drinks, treated them like furniture. Lorraine Washington was crying silently in the doorway, but her head was held high. My mother works 16-hour days so I can go to college. She cleans toilets and scrubs floors and gets paid barely enough to survive. And she does it with dignity, with pride, because she believes in something you'll never understand, that honest work matters, that raising a child matters, that building a future matters. Leo's voice rose, filling the room. You were born on third base and think you hit a triple. You inherited everything, your money, your connections, your opportunities, and you've spent your life convincing yourself you earned it by being superior. But you're not superior, you're just lucky and cruel. He pointed at the poker table. Kaz was smarter than everyone in this room. My mother has more integrity than all of you combined. And I just outplayed a billionaire with a pair of sevens and an education I got at 2 a.m. in the servants' quarters. The silence was absolute. So here's what's going to happen, Leo said. You're going to write that check for $1 million to the Servants' Children Education Fund. I'm going to start it tomorrow, and you're going to donate every year or this footage goes to every news outlet in America. You're blackmailing me, Vincent whispered. No, Leo said, I'm giving you a chance to do one decent thing in your life, take it. For a long moment, Vincent just stood there, his entire world reorganizing itself around this new reality, that he'd been beaten by the Maid's son, that his cruelty had been turned into leverage, that every phone in this room had watched him fall. Finally, his shoulders sagged. Get me a checkbook, he said to no one in particular. The Hartford Courant Society page. Servants' Children Fund awards first scholarships. Leo Washington, 18, stood before a crowd of 50 students, all children of domestic workers, groundskeepers, drivers, and staff from Connecticut's wealthiest estates. Behind him, a banner read, the Kazimir Volkov Memorial Scholarship Program. This isn't charity, Washington told the assembled students. This is justice. Your parents' labor built these fortunes. Your education is the interest they're owed. The fund, which now has $12 million in commitments from various estates following heightened scrutiny of labor practices, will send its first cohort to college this fall. Leo stood in his dorm room at MIT, full scholarship, computer science major. On his desk sat Kaz's old deck of cards, worn and soft from millions of shuffles. His mother had quit working at the Harlow estate. She now managed the Servants' Children Fund full-time, making sure no child of a domestic worker in Connecticut would have to choose between dignity and opportunity. Vincent Harlow had sold the estate, downsized. Some said he was under investigation for tax fraud. The card game footage had prompted deeper looks into his business practices. Others said he'd simply lost his taste for entertaining. Leo didn't care which story was true. He cared that 43 students were starting college this year who wouldn't have otherwise. He cared that his mother smiled more. He cared that Kaz's legacy was living on. On quiet nights when Leo couldn't sleep, he'd shuffle Kaz's old cards and remember what the Russian mathematician had taught him. The game is never just about cards, it's about seeing people clearly, who they really are beneath the masks they wear. The rich think their money makes them invisible to scrutiny, but everyone has tells, everyone has weaknesses, and the person who sees clearly, that person holds all the power. Leo had learned to see clearly. He'd learned that poverty doesn't determine intelligence, that privilege doesn't determine worth, and that the most dangerous thing you can do to the powerful is refuse to stay invisible. The powerful count on your silence, your self-doubt, your belief that you don't belong at the table. But here's the truth they don't want you to know: everyone belongs at the table. You just have to be willing to call their bluff. Subscribe for more stories like this, stories about people who refuse to be underestimated, who turned their disadvantages into advantages, and who proved that real power comes not from what you're born with but from what you choose to become.